Adrian, hey, thanks so much for all the help yesterday. That was like super freaking awesome to get the rad reports running. And by the way, in that video, you probably saw me like running these forms to advance to the next page, go to the previous page. I mean, it's just so cool. I was having so much fun.
Yeah, it was. I'm pretty happy we got it working, and the more stuff that works together, I think can be really productive.
Yeah. And by the way, just to sort of bottom this out, I the only change I had to make was changing the way the mount worked inside of Membrane Fulcro to basically slip a little more information about the app state. And then I made the reload thing so that basically the way the hot reloading works is that I just put a form refresh in the, what do you call it? It's like the top level namespace. It's a form that runs every time I reload the namespace, and it just
Oh,
shows the app state.
yeah, I was wondering how you got that working. So
Yeah, yeah, right. So
yeah,
there's probably got to be a better way, but it works super well, and it's super fun, right? Just be able to make changes and just have it show up right away. Like, love
yeah.
it.
I mean, I think there's that's kind of makes it a lot easier to work, and I think it should. Computers are fast enough; you should be able to do that.
Totally. Yeah. In fact, that was what I wanted to focus on first. Yeah. So this call, yeah. In fact, you've been working on all these things. I just the purpose of this session is just like to give a tour of that, and it's just so intriguing to me, like what you're building. Essentially, what is it? Tabula rasa, like from blank slate, right? So it's just awesome. So yeah, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, so part of the reason I started working on Membrane is there's types of applications that I wanted to make that I didn't feel like I could make with, or would be really difficult to make with what was available. So now the purpose of this is kind of sharing some of the things that I've made with Membrane. Let's see. So should be able to see my screen now.
Yeah. Oh my
Cool,
God.
yeah.
What's
I mean, I could do a
madness in
big
the back?
preface.
Yeah, this is
But
great. Yeah, no, go for it. Like whatever would be most useful, I think for maybe for the someone watching with no context, I think that'd be super awesome.
yeah, I mean, I see a lot of demos and they spend 20 minutes talking about the demo before they get into it. It's like, well, just show me and I'll decide for myself. So that's what I'm trying to do here.
All
So
right.
this is the couch simulator
Oh my God.
that you've been working on. And so this is so there's kind of a couple different pieces here. So this is kind of sort of, it's sort of spreadsheet like, so you can type stuff in and you can see, so there's kind of a set of rows. I'm pulling this closer to me. And each row has a name, which gets, it just creates a random name if you don't care. And then it has an input, kind of this is the code input, and then it has the value. So, and then it kind of plus a2 and
Oh my gosh.
so it's kind of spreadsheet like in the sense that but the differences is that every variable has an explicit name, whereas in like spreadsheets you don't necessarily give things a name. It's kind of just the row and column.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Hey, and so what is the first row? I love these. This is a gen 61 166. Is that like what was that? What is that data structure? And is that actually a var somewhere or
Right. So you can see that this is the namespace that it's running in. So this is uk.gk. And so it has access to everything in there. So I'm already in this namespace here. So I've got foo42. And then if I go back and type in foo, it's 42. So this is all of these things are being evaluated in this namespace here.
Got it.
And so
and
in this
when
namespace
you type a name for something, is that visible in the REPL? No, it can't be, right?
It can be. So if I do var, so that's what this little checkbox is here. So you can tell that I haven't spent much time on the UI because it's all very so yeah, now if I do this here and type var, you can see
oh my
so basically
God.
this is just like give it a depth, but most of these a lot of times you just have kind of anonymous names here that you don't necessarily want to pollute your namespace with all your scratch work here, because then you can, a lot of times you kind of type stuff in and then you just get rid of it and then add more stuff.
Holy cow. Sorry, I just have so many questions. Wait a minute. So I'm just trying to pull this out in my own head to create a mental model. So it's running on the same JVM as your REPL.
Mhm.
So if you create a var in the spreadsheet, it shows up in the namespace as a var. So it can get everything that's in the namespace you can access, and you can also write into the namespace. I'm not sure if I'm using exactly the same words, but that's what you're showing off.
Right. So I mean, it's basically just evaluating these forms and showing you the value. And
Yeah.
so when it evals it, it uses, I mean, you can change the namespace here, but right now I'm just running in this particular namespace because it has the SimState. And so there's several types of blocks here, and you can add more, but this is kind of the basic set that I've started with. And you have this double bang, the double exclamation mark. And so most of these Clojure, I mean, I was actually not sure whether it was a good idea, but Clojure actually works pretty well. You can just kind of, most things are without side effects. And so you can just eval as you type, and it's like not a big deal, which I was kind of surprised how much you could do with, evaluating as you're typing, because that's the fastest feedback you can get, really. And I was worried that, you'd do that and your program would explode. But for most Clojure programs, it's not really an issue. But there are some things where they have side effects. And so that's what this double bang is for, is that there's this little go button. And so it will wait to evaluate it when you hit go. And so if there's side effects, so for this one, it's dereferencing an atom. So if you want to like catch a snapshot, which I'm doing here by hitting go, and then you update the atom, you don't necessarily want it to change. And kind of the third piece, so there's the name, there's the code, and then there's the value. And so for the view, it uses another project I've worked on called Viscous. And so there's kind of some important design goals with Viscous. And the main one is that it runs in constant time and space. And so especially with Clojure, where you can have kind of one, extremely large data structures, and two, potentially infinite structures. So here's range, which is an infinite sequence of numbers. And you can see that it just kind of, hopefully I didn't break something. Oh, I might have hit the wrong button here and ruined my demo, but
yeah.
Let's see. Okay, I think I hit the wrong button. So let me, there's still some
that's
kinks to work out. Let me
evaluating the infinite sequence.
No, and I think what I did is there's another, all the buttons aren't labeled. So whoops. So yeah, I have to restart over now, but
all good.
And also didn't necessarily prepare anything, so I
all good.
This isn't necessarily a polished demo, but okay. I want to try that again. Hopefully it won't break this time, but it may be embarrassing and may break again. But well, I don't know. I think it's so you should be able to type in range here. Okay, so it's showing and it's not exploding. So there's this button here that will crash it because it will try to draw. Okay, yeah. So you can see that it's like an infinite sequence of numbers, and it basically limits.
Yeah.
It'll use how much screen space is available, and then it kind of tries to truncate it. And that works really great for really large data structures, as well as potentially infinite data structures, especially when you're working with Clojure where you can have lazy sequences.
So cool.
So yeah, I think for you, okay, so there's SimState, and so from the couch simulator, we have the SimState here. And so you can kind of see it pull up all the different turns. And then if you click on one, you can zoom in. And so you can see a room. And even when I was, I use this tool to kind of get familiar with how your SimState works. So it's really useful for, so I have state here, and I can do, oops. Let's see. Okay. So I made this, I usually work on this on the other monitor. So this is actually a little bit smaller than my.
Yeah, if you want to switch monitors, that's fine.
Okay, well, yeah, and so you can kind of work with the data in place and kind of see.
By the way, it is wild seeing the eval happen like on every keystroke. That is like so.
Yeah, so you can look at all the rooms.
Oh.
And so you can, okay, so like I'll do stuff like, okay, so this is all the rooms. Here are all the states. And it's nice because you make a type. This is really great for demos because it's like you make a typo and it's like, oh, you immediately know, and you don't have to get 3 steps later to figure out that, I don't know how to type. And then you can do stuff like this, where you can get all the frequencies. Okay, there's,
oh my gosh.
And yeah, so having that instant feedback, and especially with Clojure, where everything's pure functions for the most part, it works really well. And it's really nice for this kind of exploratory.
Yeah, in fact, I mean, this is what just a quick reflection. One of the coolest things that I'm starting to do with Membrane is actually just have like these things that I would normally put into like Portal or Clerk and just put them in my freaking window, right? It's like, tell me how many rows do you think I have, or how many? It's like, it is awesome. And I'm just actually I'm having a lot of problems. So I'm finishing up this book. I'm working on this book, and my hands really hurt. And like just from the amount of mousing around on a trackpad I have to do to sort of like bring up this data structure, double click, click in this little area. I mean, my hands really hurt. And I just I love the, and then oh shoot, the value I tapped is like 10 minutes old. Shit, I got to go tap another one. I have to go all the way back up. I mean, this is like really
right. So
great.
I think for me, I think Clerk is in a really nice sweet spot where you get to use your own editor and you can kind of get up and running, and it works out of the box, and you can kind of just immediately start using it. The piece that I'm trying to work on here that is a little bit harder to do in Clerk is kind of this feedback. So you have the SimState and then you kind of drill into it. So, okay, I have this map of rooms, and then I can, let's see, what's interesting. Okay, painting time remaining. Okay, so I can,
oh man.
So here we have the rooms, and you have rooms, map, painting time remaining. Okay, and then so you can either add it all together if you wanted a sum. Or actually, let's just painting times. And then here we can do you can see the total painting time, and then you can have the frequencies is one that I use a lot because it just kind of gives you some nice a nice summary.
Oh, this is great.
Okay, and so obviously this is not great because you can't make sense of it when it's in a map. So let's just sort by first. Okay, so you can see that there's 3,282 instances of 0 paint time remaining, and then here's kind of the rest.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, and
so
can you take a moment to sort of describe what those 3 buttons are? The little boxes, or like in the lower
okay,
right-hand
yeah.
corner.
So let's see if I can remember. Okay, so yeah, so the red one is kind of to resize this one. So if you want to see more of something, you can see more of it. If you don't care about it, you can make it smaller. So the kind of how much it uses as much screen space. It tries to use as much screen space as it can.
Okay.
The blue, so you can kind of zoom in. So here are all the rooms, and then I click on the second room here, and it's a map, and you can click on kind of this key. There's still some work to
Wait. I'm sorry. I had a momentary lapse of attention. I was just writing down some notes. Okay, so I got the lower right-hand button is like a drag to resize. What's the blue one?
Right. So as you zoom in, you can kind of zoom in here, and then the blue button is to zoom back out.
Ah, got it. Okay.
Yeah. And then the third one is let's see, I need to painting times. Okay. So what's a good way to do this? So painting times. This is not the, I guess the pink button is not something I use a lot of. What do you take? Or we'll do frequency? No. Okay, well, this isn't going to be that interesting, but okay, actually. Okay, so I've turned it into a view, and then you can just click the button, and it's now a.
Got it.
So I think before, when it was spinning, and I had to restart it, it's because so the this view is in constant time, so it can work with super large data structures or potentially infinite data structures without in constant time. But if you click the pink button, it'll try to draw that. And when you try to draw an infinite sequence, that's bad.
Got it. Got it. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, got it. So the pink button is treat it as a view and render it. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
And yeah, so this is just some basic spreadsheet stuff. You can get the data, you can take a look at it, and it's really great for scratch work. I use it all the time. I think I really love this viscous viewer, even though there's still room for improvement, but I definitely think this should be, I wish this is the default data view everywhere, because I mean, a lot of times you get this high level structure, and it's really easy to zoom in and kind of poke around.
Yeah.
And kind of one of the next steps is adding drag and drop, where you can kind of like drag an element to somewhere else to kind of keep working on it. But
that's insane. By the way, I've never gotten drag and drop to work anywhere in any program in my 35 years of trying. Maybe I did once. I don't think it was actually correct. Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, I think drag and drop support is kind of one of the things I want to work on next, because I think I have a good way to do that in Membrane, where it's not. I mean, I think one of the hard parts in typical programming is it's really this thing that is a higher level thing. It's like the parent view has to be involved. And so you have kind of like a little bit of state here, and then there's another view, and trying to get all these things to coordinate, even though they kind of don't know about each other. Whereas with functional event handling, it makes it a lot easier to do that. Yeah.
Huh.
But anyway, that's not quite available yet, but that,
Oh, that's so cool. And I think I would use this all the time just because but I've gotten in the habit of making clerk namespaces, and they really turn into sort of like dev namespaces where I often use the clerk notebooks namespace just without sometimes ever firing up clerks. It's just a place to sort of even if I never render a clerk view, it's just it's actually become of just a very productive way to program. I would use this I think in many places where I would do that. In fact, you'll see in the membrane fulcro stuff where I have a whole page of just forms where I'm just trying to find out what things look like. Sometimes I do it in Portal, sometimes I do it. I mean, this would be that would take the place of I mean, I would use this for like just a bunch of reasons, right? Just a very, very fast feedback.
yeah, I mean, I have, so you can see how I loaded it. So I have this, I'm kind of hesitant to tell people so that I don't want other people to mess this up for me, but basically I have a namespace called dev, which has all these kind of utilities for me. And one of them is to add spreadsheet, which would it, let's see, further expand. So this is part of my dev workflow, but basically, when you call it, it will use closures add libs to add that dependency, and then it will do this kind of require into my local namespace. So I can then, so like I have a lot of projects that I work on, and I have this dev tool that I want to be able to kind of use everywhere.
Yeah.
And instead of going to all these projects and adding this dependency, I just have a global thing with dev where I can kind of dynamically add, when I need it, I dynamically add it. And then when I open it up, it's in the namespace that I'm currently in, and I can kind of just start playing around with it. Yeah.
By the way, can you show me how to get ad lib to, I've that's been on my to-do list for like a year. It's
yeah, I mean, I have, that's, so.
like, do I just need to run a tools.dep with a special branch? Is that how?
Yeah, you just, there's like a specific git URL commit that has, or branch. Yeah, there's a specific coordinate that you can use in your deps Eden, and then you can
and then you just ad lib and then you put in the coordinate. Oh, so cool.
Yeah, which is really useful for trying stuff out. And you can see that you can also, so I have these working locally, and that's because I kind of improve this is the dev tool that I use across all my projects. And so I want to kind of improve it and make adjustments and fix things as I'm using it. And so having the local, so you can use local root. So I have it, it's not downloading the dependency from the internet, it's actually using the local root. And then I can, as I work on it across these projects, I can fix it and then eventually check it in and push updates. And so, yeah, so what I've shown here is kind of just some really basic stuff with kind of in the clerk and portal areas of, except for you can kind of, there's this feedback where you can, so I created the rooms here, and then I can kind of continue using it, and I can, I can create, new rooms where I go and edit that and continue working. So there's kind of a feedback there, where as you drill in, you can then use that. And then some of the other pieces that I haven't shown are, so another, so there was a kind of a glimpse at, so in the three pieces here, you have the name of a cell, you have its code, and you have its value. And so we saw kind of how there's multiple ways to view a value. So there's this built-in one, and then if you give it membrane views, you can also display it that way. There's also built into this different ways to input code. And so we saw a glimpse of that where here's a number slider, which is like the most basic way to input code, which is just a number. And so I often use that for nth rooms
Yeah.
index. And so I can, so you can kind of build ad hoc tools this way. So this is the 53rd room, and you can kind of
Oh my gosh.
slide through here. And so now you have kind of a pager element.
Oh, that's so cool. By the way, I mean, this is what sorry, just to explain this, the psi. In Clerk, I mean, there's all these amazing tools where like you're pushing state to the JavaScript front end to make a slider, and then you're pulling it back, right? And so I played around with that, and I found it kind of difficult. I found it difficult. And actually, this is like one of the things that just draws me to membranes. Like, okay, just let's not 2 programs, 1 program. This is great. I find this so exciting. I would use this all the time, just for this.
Yeah, I mean, I started working. So before I built Membrane, I was working on something like this, and I was trying to do it in the browser. And you just run into all these problems of like, okay, everything needs to be serialized, so I can't work with super large data structures. And when I do, everything gets slow. And then if I have state in the browser, I need to like sync it. And you can't do it, but there's kind of this like, sometimes there's a delay and you can't figure out why, or there's kind of the timing is weird. And so you have to figure that out. And there's these 2 run times and you have to figure out, there's just all these, it's a really hard problem. And I think Clerk, like I said, I think Clerk is in a sweet spot where for kind of getting you up and running, it does a really great job at those things, but there are also just some really hard challenges.
Yeah.
This kind of just sidesteps. It's like, okay, just one environment.
Right. Oh, that's so cool. And yeah, I kind of give up when it's like you're sending these kind of quoted forms, from the Clerk back end to the Clerk front end. It's like I just get so lost that I spent maybe a couple hours on that and then kind of gave up. Yeah, super. It was beyond me. It was something I could not do with a lot of facility.
Yeah, like let's see. Let's see if I can do a good example here. Like one of the things that, and you also just get a ton of, I don't know if this will work, but it would be cool if it did. So dev add libs. Here's a Spectre. Let's see if this does something. No, it doesn't. Okay. Oh, I gotta quote this. Okay, so maybe this. Okay, so I just added, I don't think Spectre was already, it could have already been added, but if it wasn't, it just got dynamically loading libraries is this cool thing that both Clojure and the JVM help support. And so now, let's see if I can find a require statement to copy and paste here. Okay.
So I'm actually holding my breath right now.
Okay. We need to, one of the cool things is you can actually use this for demos because it tells you immediately before you get too far. So rooms, how do you do this?
Oh, I just was using this.
Select, okay. So do just something basic to, okay, yeah. So cool, yeah, there's all the IDs. There's all the roles.
Mm-hmm.
There's the, what is this? States. Yeah, so I just dynamically loaded Spectre, which is like hard to use in the browser sometimes. I added it and now I'm using it. And yeah, these are things that are I mean, I think you get a lot of leverage when you work in the browser. There's all these UI libraries that kind of work in the browser, but I think those UI libraries are easier to build than this kind of stuff, where the JVM gives you dynamically loading libraries, performance, multiple threads. Like these are things that are impossible in the browser. So it's like, it is a lot of work to, build membrane and kind of, like, there is some stuff, there is a lot of extra work when you use, if you decide to make your own UI library that works on desktop. But, you get all these features that are just almost, I mean, I think people are doing stuff like this, but it's a huge amount of work, and it's just not, like getting threads in the browser is just going to take years, and it's going to be a worse version than what you can get on the JVM. So you kind of have to choose. And for me, I think long-term solving these kind of UI problems and is a little easier. And on top of, I think a lot of the UI stuff is kind of good for getting up and running, but it's really, there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of design issues with UI libraries as they're kind of currently embodied with on top of React and HTML and Swing. So,
yeah. By the way, one of the super energizing kind of text threads that we were having was it was actually this use case where I was looking at trying to visualize the commit history of book manuscripts, and I had 100 at the time 135 frames, and I was just trying to see again, kind of like, what does it look like over time? And all I wanted was a slider bar, because I mean, like in the absence of something like this, right? I'm always I set n, grab nth, right? 20% of the time I have a null pointer exception, right? And it's just I actually got a slider bar working, but it was so slow that it was just because I was round tripping, to the browser and whatever, right? I mean, it was so this would be and the idea of actually just abandoning Vega. I mean, Vega is great, but instead of laying out the tree map, which is not terribly fast, right? Actually just render a big box full of either render the markdown tree by hand, or being able to render the markdown in a just a recursive, just render it as a sparkline, vertical spark line or something. I mean, I totally saw it. It was just dazzlingly easy, easier than I had thought about, right? And it just reminds me of what Tudor Gerber was doing inside of Smalltalk and Clamorous Toolkit, where the fact that a small team built all of that, right? I mean, it really just it's inspiring, and it just shows that this is sort of validates your point that just by proof by example, you can actually bootstrap so much of this from scratch. It's awesome. Sorry, that was maybe less than totally coherent. I was thinking about the markdown rendering. I was thinking about like how unsatisfying it was, trying to render that, and it was very invigorating to think that hey, just transform the markdown tree into a set of membrane component and membrane views. Love it. I mean, I totally saw how to do that in a way that would be super helpful and also super fast.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think the if you don't have a good alternative, it seems like the browser is the way to go, but there's just a lot of incidental complexity that just makes life really hard. But anyway, I was trying to explain this. So you have the code input.
Yeah.
And there's this paper by, I think, Leif Anderson, who did this in the browser with ClojureScript. I don't know how, because that's like really hard to do. But she wrote this paper where you can have visual code. And so the types of inputs that you can have are not just, I think there's more ways to do code input than just typing text in. There's visual representations that you can do. And so as an example, you can have a number slider as code, you can have text as code, but you can also just have, other random stuff as code. So here is it's like a little GUI editor. And yeah, let's see. And it also kind of works. I don't know, let's try to do some example. And index rooms should be index. Okay. Oh, right, I can't. These are in the wrong order. And then, okay, so we have state. Oh, right, I gotta give this a name. Okay, cool. So they have this, let's give this label a name. Room states. And I guess we'll also have the room ID. And let's move this here and move this here. Okay. So now this is a room view.
Oh my gosh.
And so you can do stuff like, so there's another, let's see if I can remember out of this room. So there's another concept of, so in spreadsheets, one of the problems with spreadsheets is they don't necessarily have a good, there's not a good built-in way to do abstraction. But there could be, and it's actually not that complicated. So basically a function is you have, in Clojure, it's in other programming languages, it's not necessarily apparent, but in Clojure, it's really obvious because its code is data, data is code. So you have for a def end, you have a name. So let's say, let's just call it arrow view, and it takes a list of function arguments, so that we'll have it take a room, and then it returns, and then it has a return value. So we'll say it's the room view is the return value. And so what this make fun statement does is it basically figures out how to it has room view, and it basically figures out how to write all the code in between room view and the arguments. And so you can do rooms take 5 or by UI vertical layouts codes map view.
What the?
See if this works. Okay, and then you can hit the button. And so now you have
oh my gosh. Wait a minute,
yeah.
hang on. So could you go through what make fun did? So the input is a room, the output is a room view.
Let me just do one more thing. And so hopefully this works. Okay, yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so it lets you make your program out of smaller pieces and then kind of compose them together interactively. And I think with Clerk, there's this output for the most part. There are ways to get kind of input back into your program, but I think what Tudor is doing with Glamorous Toolkit is that you really need Clerk prioritizes letting you use your own editor, but because it is a pain in the butt to write a code editor. Like this is based off of a project called Liquid, which I didn't write, but it's it's a pain in the butt to try to write your own code editor. But if if you don't have all that integrated, you kind of, it's only going, for the most part, your development is only going one direction. So,
yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, just 3 questions. Oh my gosh. So make fun. I'm just trying to prove to myself that it's not magic. So it's the input is a room. The output is a room view.
yes, you can actually,
And,
so before I was saying there's each row has a name of a name.
yeah,
It has the code, which in this case isn't text, it's just like,
yeah.
it's editor thing. And you can see, you type, let's see if I can remember how to do this. You can type stuff in and it's,
Yeah.
it
So-
is combined code. And then you still have the value over here. So you can actually, views are values. So you can kind of see, okay, there's this,
Yeah.
here's a label. And you can see, here's the color in here.
Oh my
And so, yeah.
gosh.
And
Yeah.
and like I was saying, this also, let's see. I haven't tried this, so this could like fail spectacularly. But basically, this is all live, and so we should be able to do. Does this work? Yeah. So here's the dev view from the namespace that I'm working in, and you can just kind of like move it around and let's let's put in another one for no reason.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, this is the dev view that you created. And now it's just it's kind of an element that that you can then reuse and kind of work with and move around. And
Holy cow. Wow. Oh, by the way, and where is state? How is this saved? Like all this, where's the spreadsheet saved?
So there is a way to
Save.
do that, but it's a little bit clunky, and that's still kind of a work in progress. So the step one is like being able to build things that I would want to use later.
Yeah.
Which I now have gotten to the point where it's like, okay, I built things and like I really don't want to like type it in every time. And so there are ways to do that, but I think I mean, that's one of the other kind of where I think Clerk is in the sweet spot, is because they can you get to use your own editor, which is great. And you can also, like these Clerk notebooks, you just check into Git like all your other code, which is also great. Here, it's kind of a pain in the butt because you don't get your own editor. And so this editor is clunky compared to most editors you're familiar with. And there's this open question of how do you save this? So there's multiple, I mean, it's not like has to be just one way to do it, but saving it from a readable file that looks just like normal code in Git is clunky. What I've been looking into is just projects like, I don't know if you remember, there's a project that Rich Hickey released called Codec, where you just put all this stuff in a database. And so that's what I've been kind of researching and trying to figure out how to do, is how to just put this in a database. And there's all this cool stuff with that, but there's definitely some open questions as to how that makes sense, especially when not all your code is text forms.
Yeah.
So some of your code are these.
Can I just put an opinion out there? Just like
yeah.
I mean, if I could save it to like an Eden file, anything, and just put it into I would put it in the same directory as my Clerk notebooks.
Yeah, there is so I think
and I don't even care if it's Eden or not, right? It's I would not be editing this thing manually.
Okay, let's try this. So I don't actually care if I lose this, but I think this works. So I'm going to save it as gene.eden. And then I'm gonna restart the REPL and we'll see what happens. So yeah, we're doing it live. Yeah, I noticed that you have the dev alias that's required for
What's that?
In the couch simulator, you
Yeah.
have the dev alias.
Oh yeah,
which
yeah.
I don't typically have set up, so I have to manually
Yeah,
add
yeah.
that. So okay, so I reopened it, and so load this is okay. Let's see what happens. I actually don't know, because I work on some stuff and then I like work on other things, and then okay, here we go.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So hopefully, yeah, okay, cool. So yeah, so you can't, so it works. Okay, good. So you can load and save stuff, but it is a little bit clunky. It's not, that part is still a work in progress.
Right. So maybe, shoot, I have a call in 15 minutes, so I probably have to leave in about 15. Maybe not today, but if I had a little more time, I would love to actually get this loaded up. I know I probably would have spent 50% of my time yesterday in this, because all I was doing is rooting around this giant map, right? The Fulcrum map. I mean, that would be so cool, right? And
Yeah, I mean, there are things that are kind of clunky for sure. There's a lot of I mean, the other nice things about like Fulcro, Rad, and Clerk is that they are really polished. So they have kind of fewer rough edges. This is not polished. It has a bunch of rough edges. As you can see, like almost nothing is labeled.
yeah.
It's like plus smiley face. Okay. But it is quite usable if you know how to use it, which nobody except for me does.
Right. I would be an enthusiastic user just out of the utility it provides. So
but I mean, I use this all the time. So I have gotten a lot of use out of it, and I think this is really just scratching the surface of what I think is possible. So I've been working on kind of other missing pieces to kind of really really show what there's four, I guess there's 1, 2, 3 different types of code here. There's the number slider, there's this UI builder, there's the eval on press, but as I think I mentioned that paper, the visualizing.
oh, can you pull that up in a browser? I was trying to find that. And what is Liquid, the Liquid editor? Is that like a Java thing?
No, that's a closure project by Mogenslund or something. Okay.
Ew. Wow.
She has a cool web page. Oh, here we go. Let me pull this over. I don't know what thing.
Wow.
Okay, I actually don't know how to use any of this, but this is
Okay,
this
yeah.
is the paper, which I think just really explains the ideas really well, and I think is yeah, it explains the ideas really well, and I think building on this is awesome, and I think it's actually really hard to do because, I mean, I think these ideas are really natural in Membrane from my perspective, and I think trying to build this on top of either the web or on top of kind of like some like object-oriented IDE plugin thing is really, really hard. So I think some of these ideas, I think, are maybe going to be overlooked in the short term. But I think in the long term, these are really powerful ideas, and I would love to see more people kind of.
Yeah. Hey,
ideas.
I have 10 minutes. Can I just give you kind of a free form impressions?
Yeah. I want to hear what your reaction is.
Yeah. So when I first wrote that RSS reader and RSS archive reader, what is it really? It's an Feedly RSS archive reader, right? And I wrote it once in Membrane, once in SteelJFX, and then once in Fulcro and my reaction from using Membrane is like, whoa, this is kind of tough sledding for. I mean, I recall I was asking, hey, could I get it so that my trackpad scrolling isn't upside down, right? I mean, that was way back then, right? When I scrolled, it was upside down. I mean, it was early days, and my impression was that for the stuff I wanted to do back then, like even the CLJFX cases, like I always wanted, like for to render a tweet, right? It's like, okay, I actually want to run some JavaScript. So I was actually trying to shove JavaScript into the CLJX JavaScript, the HTML viewer or whatever. So I think there's a category of applications where I'm just using Fulcro Rad. It's just simple enough to build these kind of forms and reports. But I'm finding that in the couch simulator, right? It's like it's like that's the opposite of what I would want. I mean, that's like the opposite of what is good for Fulcro and Fulcro Rad. It was so great just to be able to render stuff. And the aha moment was just being able to get all this kind of real-time display of variables was just so awesome. And I for the most part, didn't get hung up on kind of like I changed something, why won't render? It just that kind of those issues just didn't happen. So it's kind of reintroducing the joy of like having kind of real-time display. And I feel like when I talk about Membrane, I always kind of qualify as saying it's a bit Spartan. The code for it's but I would be unapologetic about that because it's I'm building things that I would not be building, and I'm getting help from tools that would not that I built, right? That I would not be using. I wouldn't be benefiting from, if it weren't for this. And I guess one of my takeaways from the Smalltalk Calamus Toolkit experience is like, holy cow, there is like so much you can do if you can. I mean, I think as the Vizar paper says, like, man, the text editor in the Jack Rusher treatment is like, that's a 50-year-old paradigm that sort of shuts the door on a whole bunch of things. I mean, just to see what Tudor is doing, I mean, it was dazzling. And so I just find I think this is all so promising. This shows it's just mind expanding to see like what you can do from like the mundane things. Show a counter, right? To me, that was hugely valuable, right? Just to show how many rows does Fulcro think that is in the database. I mean, it was just so awesome just to have that number just always showing. And yesterday, I spent probably 70% of my time just evaluating forms, just trying to find, navigating this giant map, right? Like IntelliJ cursive and hitting Command Shift I all the time. It shows us not a great like Tudor Gerbo would probably vomit at that. He's like, yeah, pretty good. We can do so much better. Yeah, I think it's so promising. It opens up so many capabilities. I'm just so thrilled to see this, and I just want to encourage you to keep going.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I do admit Membrane is kind of weird in the sense that like I try to spend as much time as I can working on problems I don't know how to solve yet. And so there's all these problems I know how to solve, like, oh, the scrolling is janky, or like, can I get I don't know, there's all these facilities that are kind of like built into a normal UI libraries that are kind of just like, as you were saying, missing from membrane. So like it's missing all the stuff that you would expect, because like all these are things I know how to solve, but I could spend all my time on that. But I'm really trying to focus on like, okay, what are these things that are like basically impossible to solve in these other paradigms? So like, I think viscous is an example of that, where you can do kind of lazy loading visualization, like data inspectors, but having something that is really like actually constant space and time and screen space data inspector that's like really quick and fast to work with is a huge benefit. I mean, it makes certain problems just like trivial, and it's also extremely difficult to do in something like Clerk, where, I mean, they do have some lazy loading, but there's kind of, I mean, you can't just like, oh, I want to see a little bit more. You kind of have to like, give me another 100 rows. And
right.
it just like, okay, I was taking up this much of the screen. Now it's like half my screen. It's like, and there's other kind of features like that. And I think there's still some other features I haven't shown about the component editor, but those types of things are really, really hard to do in other things that I've been trying to focus on. So yeah. Anyway,
Yeah,
I
and
know
by the
that
way,
you gotta
just to
head
be
out, so.
explicit, when I say Spartan, I think I just maybe I'm not so much talking about like the absence of functionality, but like it's kind of it's not as pretty as like what people are accustomed to. But hey, man, like I'm not complaining.
No, I think I mean, I think you're absolutely right there. And I think yeah, those are I think those are important things. But I'm more trying to make sure like, okay, where's the wall that I'm going to eventually run into when I try to make really complex applications? And those are the problems that I'm working on. And I think I do have a pretty good idea of how to fix some of the styling issues and like, oh, like I want a drop down, I want a date picker, I want these built-in components. So like I know how to solve those. So like I do plan on coming back to those, but I really want to make sure these hard problems are
love it.
being worked on.
Thanks for doing this. Hey, by the way, can we conclude this call and then can I call you from my car in like a couple minutes?
Sure.
If you can go a little longer.
Yeah.
Cool. Hey, Adrian. So I'll hit stop on this record. Anything you want to share or like before we conclude?
Help I don't have anything on the top of my head, but yeah, thanks for taking the time. This is really this feedback is really valuable to me, so I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So one of the things I'll do is I'm going to get this running on my system because I know I'll use it. And it's super great. I saw the tweets on this. So tell you what, let me, and then I feel like I need like a couple of days to sort of, I'll be sending you some DMs, maybe in the membrane channel about reflections on this. This is great.
Awesome.
Can you DM me your phone number and I'll call you in like 3-4 minutes.
Sounds good.
Hey, thanks, buddy. Bye-bye.